Hey, it's Dermot Mulroney.
Hi, this is Carlson Young, and you're watching the whole podcast.
Welcome to the Hole. I am Rob Sprance,
I'm Lori Levine.
and we are doubly excited here. I've got a two for one. We don't usually get on the show. We've got Carlson Young joining us and Dermot Mulroney. Both are in a film called The Blazing World, which Carlson wrote and directed. I watched it last night. I am pretty blown away by how beautiful this film is.
And stars in.
Right, yeah, exactly. As she stars in it as well. I can't imagine for you. It's funny when I was watching this, I was thinking, the beauty of cinema is that it creates these worlds for us that most of the time we'd never get to be a part of. But a lot of times the world is very similar to ours. And in the case of this film, that is not. This is a journey. This is a an experience on top of just being a really good film. And I loved every minute of it. It is so beautiful, and I wanted to kind of get an idea of why you chose this to be your first one. Most times you see the first film from any director, like Paul Thomas Anderson. It's hard eight. It's conversational. It's easy to shoot,
Yeah,
and you went
yeah.
for it on your first one, and I'm so impressed by that. So what made you want to choose this one as your first?
You know, Growing up, what I fell in love with about cinema and storytelling really in general was through fantasy. I'm a Tolkien freak. Middle Earth
Mhm.
is my comfort zone. Harry Potter is Dark Materials, like this like big kind of epic genre is what always just like got my soul really excited. And then I saw my first horror film, The Shining, when I was like in fifth grade with my dad.
Mhm.
And that also sort of like impregnated my psyche. So I came up as an actor and had worked on a lot of stuff, but I'd never done anything that felt like who I actually am as an artist. And while this was a really huge undertaking, I had this little voice like, go big or go home, which, there was a
Mhm.
lot of good that came out of that. And then a lot of things to learn, I think, from that mentality. But I just this was just something that I had to do, and I just didn't question it. And if I did question it, I probably maybe wouldn't have done it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, it's smart, and it's the ambition to go ahead and do that. It's a big deal, and there's a lot of first films look like first films. This one does not, like, even in the slightest. And now, Dermot. I'm sure you did multiple dances when you found out you had Dermot in the film, who is,
Oh yeah,
yeah, of
yeah.
course, because now Dermot is very versatile in all of his roles, and in this one, you almost have to be versatile inside the film because you're playing the same character in multiple ways. So again, I don't want to give anything away. I want everyone to watch it and get their own experience of it. But it was kind of cool to see you in different ways
Yeah.
too, Dermot, because I don't always associate you with fantasy horror, but maybe now people will start doing that also.
Well, as much as it plays in that context and Carlson's visuals at will, whichever she prefers, can either go into poetic imagery or super gothic, scary horror. So my character plays between those two realms too, that it jumps over time and it also jumps in perspective from such this incredibly strong central viewpoint of the film that that is in the character that Carlson plays. So yeah, the short version is I play like the not so good dad in real life, and then I play a super grotesque version of that, and there are even other layers within that.
Mhm.
When I said before you turned on the mics and stuff that Carlson, really asked a lot of me, I didn't mean so much what it sounds like, which it is a very difficult role and challenging, but I also felt that I was being asked to deliver part of her psyche, you know what I mean? And I took it on as a very serious project, to deliver someone who had such a crystal clear vision. I've worked with a few directors, and a lot of directors say, that's just how I dreamed it. But a few of them mean, that's exactly how I saw it when I had that dream, which is a different category. So when Carlson says that, you know that it really came from the subconscious and it's being portrayed on film. So that is a direct conduit, art form in ways that others aren't. So immediate, I guess I mean. And yeah, it's precisely what the filmmaker wanted to express. Carlson will speak more to that. It's a really meaningful role for me too, for those reasons.
Yeah, and you know, it does bring up that interesting dynamic of, you know, I'm not going to pretend, Carlson, you haven't been around for a long time, because of course you have. You've done tons of things. You know, you were, you know, most recently, you know, the Scream series and things like that too. So, you know, to ask these questions coming from more of a first-time director, not first to the business, of course. You know, in this case, you've got someone like Dermot who has, you know, been around so long and been in so many high-profile projects and so good in so many of them. You know, I always wondered about what that dynamic would be, because, you know, you have to work with an actor who's open to hearing things from a first-time director and vice versa. So, you know, I could imagine that you have a lot to learn from him, but at the same time, you have to have that director angle to it.
Yeah.
Did you have a little bit of a challenge? I mean, he just seems like a great guy already, so I'm sure you didn't. But was that something you were worried about?
No, absolutely. I think I think there was an element of being extremely intimidated by the actors that I was working with, because which comes from an intense level of respect. And you know, I'm in awe that you're here and that you understand that you have an entry point into this material and the story. And so that was, again, just I didn't have the bandwidth. I had too much to do to question any of it. So it was just like tunnel vision.
So you almost just dive in and just do it and let it happen.
Yeah.
Now, do you,
like,
Dermot?
Think about it afterwards.
Like, if I think about it too much, just you know, like it was just and I because I am an actor, I know the conditions that I love to work in, and that if I have a dialogue, if I'm fortunate enough to have a dialogue with the director and really understand what they're trying to say, what their sort of visual sensibilities are, and especially what kind of tone they're looking for, then you know, those are ideal working conditions for me. So I felt like if I could be as communicative as possible with Dermot, with Udo, with Vanessa, then on the front end, because we didn't have rehearsal time or anything like that, but if I could just be as clear as possible about the story and the character and where it was coming from inside of me, then I was extremely curious more than anything else to see what would come out of them.
And now in your case, Dermot, it's kind of the opposite, because you also were in her position at one point. You're an actor, you've done tons of stuff, but you also directed your own film. You've gone through that process and understand what it's like to flip onto the other side of the camera and start to realize all the things. So did you have to walk this fine line between wanting to help but not be, you know, a pain, or you know what I mean? Like, you want to help, but you don't want to condescend at the same time. You know?
No, there was never anything of the sort, and I jumped on right away with full faith. You know, the only regret I have is that I didn't approach other filmmakers like that all the time. Maybe it's just a form of maturing into trusting. But as you were talking, I'm also really thinking about the time in which we shot this film. So for me, it was very much the first one coming out of the shutdown. What month were we shooting, Carlson?
August
So August after a March shutdown. It was the very first film made. There were 3 others in the States that started that same day. At least that's our lore. I believe that of any movies, we were the first that were able to do it. We can detail how it was done, which was also ingenious and added to the innovation of making a film like this, which you'd have to do anyway, because their visuals are so challenging to capture.
Yeah.
But also this then has after June of 19, and for me, Black Lives Matter it doesn't name that time as specifically as there might sometime we'll find. But for me, that first week of June, that season was really about a cultural purge and and how to recover from what we'd been through. So to have a movie, and a part for me to portray trauma and recovery from it at that moment in my life, it was urgent. It's urgent for me to go back to work, but it's also urgent to be in a film. It's so bizarre to make those connections be something that has no direct relation, but that's cultural sense, that moment in our society, I marked it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of times we don't really think about when we watch a film, especially from the actor side, the amount of preparation that goes into it, the amount of depth from an actor. But on the director side, I mean, you mentioned you want to talk about this process, and so do I, because I'm fascinated with, like, if I just watched the film and didn't know that this was your first one, or what you had a limited budget, I wouldn't have even asked budget questions, because it doesn't look that way. It looks like, tons of money and time was taken, but you only had like a couple of weeks to shoot this, right?
Yeah, 18 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
You shot that whole thing in 18 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lived to tell about it.
And I lived to tell the tale.
And everybody did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, everybody, and that was another layer of I mean, there was mortal pressure on this film, I mean, it was all of the normal stress of an 18-day shoot, and this freaking fucking massive scope of vision to tell. But there was this mortal pressure of, like, everybody is being so generous with their time. I could cry. And they're believing that, I mean, we've engineered this entire thing to be safe and conducive to making this thing. But, the amount of pressure that I, had to sort of wake up every day and kind of peel the veil back and be able to be like, no, everybody's here. Everybody's here of their own accord. We are doing this as safely as possible. Whatever is born in this place, I don't know what it will be, but it will be sacred, and I just have to trust that.
Yeah. And I've watched a few interviews beforehand in my prep, and I don't like to watch too much because I like to formulate my own questions and opinions. But the one thing I did overwhelmingly notice is that everyone who was in the film in multiple interviews said nothing but great things about you, and how they wanted to give everything they had to make this work, because they believed in the vision and everything. And it's a little different when you're saying, I want to take my dreams and make it into a film. And you did have the benefit. So this was a short originally that you did. So you were able to kind of use that short to kind of convey that. Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to do the short? How long did you film that?
2 days was the short.
Oh, wow.
And I used all my money. I mean, it wasn't a big budget or anything, but it was like, it was everything that, it was like, I knew that I had to put my money where my mouth was. I had to stop talking about this deep desire of mine to be, a director, and, making that transition from the kind of acting roles that I had done to director was not easy. Like, people are just like, nah, you're like the chick in, like, you can do comedy. Like, this is what you'll be, or you'll be like the popular girl or something. And I really resented those, like, titles that people would give me. I don't resent them anymore. I think they're beautiful, and thank you. And they're great opportunities. Mm-hmm. But, like, it was like I made the short out of an intense desire to express myself as an artist. And then that took me into a really internal place of, what do I have to say as an artist? And then, I mean, people like David Lynch and Ingmar Bergman and Guillermo del Toro, I just saw were, like, telling these stories that I wanted to tell. too, you know, like that I wanted to put you know, sort of spin on this genre that is very male dominated. And, you know, David Lynch giving sort of the tools to me in meditation of like unearthing these ideas, not only unearthing them, but respecting the idea itself enough to say, yes, this is my dream, which is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I connect my story to the big story? And in that process, that is a catharsis and a communal healing that is hard to trust and hard to see into fruition, but I've seen it. You know, I think it's what I love about film. It's what I love about great theater and great television is like storytelling as a form of communication and healing. So that's what I was trying to do, you know?
Yeah.
And see, so Rob, can I interject there?
Of course.
There's so many people that have dreams, women that want to make movies, but Carlson has something else. I don't know what it is. Does she kind of like hypnotize you with the way she puts things, or so if you're trying to figure out what it is that made this movie, it's just simply who she is that drew me to wanting to work with her, as much as the material and the timing and all those things. And I'm still as much by her film as by her, and just spellbound. You can see that there's a really special mind at work there. If I could, I would describe a document I saw that she showed me that Carlson, you know, it showed mood and timing, and it was like scratch, scrawl, and a graph and arrows and picture all on one page that showed the entire movie drawn in a diagram. And I'd never seen one of those before, so that was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And confirm what I thought, that it's just a different way of approaching filmmaking, because it's so personal from who she is. If I may say, Carlson, you know.
Yes, that's yes. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you can't teach passion. You can't teach passion. You know,
Carlson, I'm sorry, Rod.
No, go.
One thing I was interested in is like your short did so well at Sundance, and then did like money start coming in? How did you go to make this a movie?
Certainly not. No. Unfortunately, no. The money did not come. But you know, my goal with the short at Sundance in 2018 was to show up, script in hand, and be like, "It's a bigger thing. This is a thing. Yeah, if you like it, let's." And it was big. It was a huge visual. I mean, it's obviously a visual story and a visual script, but this was like $10 million. This was a very, it was just a lot bigger. And honestly, when I think about it, the script wasn't rewritten that much for COVID, but it was obviously in certain points. But I just was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, this is a hurdle that I've gotten through. Here's the feature. I think I'm going to be able to kind of like, I think it's all downhill from here. Like maybe like somebody will be able to like see this the way that I do.
Yeah.
And the answer is no. Capital N-O. That is not how it works.
You mean you don't the screening's not done and they just come up with 2 garbage bags of money and say, yeah, make whatever you want. We don't care.
I mean, I'm like, wow, yeah, that was no, that's not it. But you know, I kind of like sending the script out. We got a lot of interest. Like I got so many meetings. It was great. And I would send the script out and they would be surprised because they were like, this feels, I had 2 people say to me, and I don't know how to take this, but I can only imagine that at the time it wasn't a derogatory comment, but it was like a comment where 2 producers said, you know, it's very feminine. And that's not really what I expected in the script. And like, are you open to notes? And I was like, well, I'm very open to notes, but if that's your thought of the script, I don't know if I'm open to your notes.
Right. You clearly didn't interpret it the right way. Because I mean, there is nothing about this like that I thought was like, it's not like I'm watching a Summer's Eve commercial. Like, I don't know where they're coming from with that.
I know. I just sort of like, I think what you mean is like alternative perspective, you know, like or something, or like a different, there's a different tune being sung or something. Like maybe I don't know, but it was a huge hurdle to go from, okay, this is a really big like $10 million movie to no, this is two, and
Right.
how are we going to do it like that?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a 2.5 year odyssey of reimagining this thing. And then of course COVID comes along, and then it's like, well, now it's really limited crew, and all of our resources are very finite and limited. So it's a fascinating evolution, because it went from just big and wide-eyed and bushy-tailed to much different, and not what I could have expected, better than I could have expected. I've told multiple people I wouldn't change a single thing. And why is that? Like, that's a really beautiful thing. And also in that 2.5 years from Sundance to actually shooting was, I was going through a lot personally. I went to Healing Trauma Center, and I got into the group therapy, and it was understanding the way that storytelling relates to people and how beautiful and important work that is. And that's how I found the confidence to even tell the story, because I'm not somebody who is like really it was hard for me to find the confidence to make this personal thing, to see it through to the very end. And at Sundance, I didn't totally even know what I was tapping on. I didn't know fully the door that I was opening for myself, and that came later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can, the story clearly is about, the underlying theme is about coping with trauma and coping, that is that underlying theme, and it's just the unique way in that it's told. You mentioned a little earlier, and I couldn't help but think of the similarities in a way with you and Dermot, in the case that, you were seeing, the popular girl. Obviously, you came from the Disney universe, so the challenge right away begins to change people's minds about what you can do and what you can accomplish. And I'd have to think that Dermot went through that a little bit too, because with the success of like My Best Friend's Wedding, and you don't want to be just the romantic comedy guy, and you don't want to be just known, like you said, as the popular girl or whatever that may be. So, in Dermot, in your case, how did you wind up trying to get past that? Was it just a matter of trying to take roles that were different, or do you just keep taking things and just showing what you do, and hopefully you start changing minds?
Yeah.
Because when you look at your body of work now, you're so versatile, and you do so many different things and so very well. But, when you get into that little niche, people tend to want to just jam you in there every time they read a script.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many ways to answer that. A lot of them sound defensive. But
do it.
It really, that's where I started, and that's what I've always wanted to do as an actor. Why I even had a concept of what I wanted to accomplish. I'm lucky, but I did, even from my earliest 20s, which was to play every kind of role. So I have managed to do that, and I'm doing that now as much as I did when I started as an actor. It's just really that middle decade and a half there, where I became known for a thing that I didn't do that often. If I look back, I think there were probably another couple of opportunities for me to pursue in the romantic comedy world. And I didn't recognize how important, how truly important those parts are and those movies are to the public, because the ones I have done have matured in ways I never anticipated and have become, cultural sort of landmarkers. Who you saw what romance with, when you saw it, it all rushes back, even when people come to me on the street to mention those roles. But really, if I was never in control of that master plan, the only thing I did was turn down some things. I have few regrets. I didn't move into television until television moved into where independent films were. So I might have done that earlier, because the work's wonderful. But no, I can't say I have any regrets. And gosh, to play a role like this, where many of those things even play in one part, is phenomenal. I can't. I have to mention the writing in The Blazing World too, for which Carlson, you skip over to all the other accomplishments, but really, so my dialogue, even a man my age, saying lines written by a woman her age that have this incredible core resonance, that's unique, I think, at least for me. So I didn't underestimate that either. I just thought the language was so beautiful. Some of it's hard to understand. It kind of leads you into your own thinking. So that was a wonderful assignment also with this role.
Yeah, and saying hard to understand, that's not necessarily, if nothing else, like I think of those 70s films, I think of somebody like Stanley Kubrick. I thought of him, actually. It was funny when it was all over and my wife asked me what I thought. I said it was like as if Stanley Kubrick did Alice in Wonderland. It just kind of was like that.
With a little bit of poltergeist.
Yeah. This just
a bit of poltergeist.
Yeah.
What a nice
and
description.
Mm-hmm. But anyone who who knows me knows, like, Stanley Kubrick's one of my absolute favorite directors, and there are moments, or even half of some of his films, that let's just use 2001 and The Monolith, and you don't know what's going on, but you don't have to know every little detail. You don't have to understand every little nuance. You can you can take it for what it is and absorb it and get your own interpretation of it. Yeah. So, again, coming as a first feature, it's so impressive and shocking that you were able to pull that off too.
I love that you mentioned The Monolith, because it's like, and that's the thing with Kubrick, and what I love about film and the directors that inspire me so deeply is that it's a question. It's a question, and it invites the viewer to participate in that question. And it doesn't, it's like, no, you could be unpacking this for years, yeah. It's not supposed to be an easy digestion process. It's a challenge. And like, that's, yeah, thanks for saying that. I will. And
can I also interject here that at the lunch table with Vanessa, who worked on Eyes Wide Shut, most of our lunches were actually first-hand accounts of working with said master director.
Oh, wow.
A masterful director, I should say.
Really?
But, so we had like a one degree from he to her.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And when she was recounting the story, which, like, she just needs her own interview to just repeat this, because I was pinching myself, like, don't cry. Like, it was just, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is so, hearing about the details to which he would pay attention to. He was so detail oriented, so strategic, so gentle in the way that he was both, like, so removed from his artistic process with his actors and so intimate. And it was like, oh my gosh, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband is also a huge Kubrick fan, and especially Wendy Carlos, and he was just like, we both just sat there that night like, can you believe that we just had the privilege of hearing that story? That was so awesome.
That's awesome. And let's compliment Isom for a minute on the score, which is another great part. And it's I didn't know, like, I knew it was a horror theme, but the opening, you have this light, airy music, and then all of a sudden there's this cutting cello, and Dermot, the cello player, that just kind of comes in and says, this is not what you think it is. And it's just telling a story through music. You can tell from behind me, I've tried many a time, I can't accomplish what he's able to do, but telling stories through music, and that set such a great tone right away. I love the choice of Stone Roses at the same time that Dermot's on a bender. What a wonderful mash of selections there.
Yeah.
I actually did the song that the woman sings on stage in the woods. What is that? I have to go back and find what that is. Is that something?
It's called "Oh to Be a Rainbow." It's an original song by Soko. That is on her newest album, which I think is also called "Oh to Be a Rainbow." It's on Spotify, very accessible, and I'm a huge fan of her music, and I know her personally, and I've always just really loved her and respected her as an artist. And when I heard that song, I was like, wow, this is you don't need to save me. I can save myself. And then with the Stone Roses, I don't have to sell my soul. He's already in me. And then with the Panda Bear song there at the end, sampling the Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux, it's all in the family. Sick has to eat well too. There's all of these things are like it's like nauseatingly perfect for this material. And so Isom is somebody that he's obviously my husband, but someone that I've watched creatively since I was 23. And I've just always been in awe of two things: his work ethic, the way that he lasers into a mood in a piece of music, and the amount of raw creative material that comes out of this man is just like, it's angelic. And so he'd never done a score before, and we'd worked together briefly on the short, but I knew in my bones that he's tapped into something really, really profound in the way that he approaches music. And so we were very much in this dialogue together of like, the score is a character in the film. It's a character in the film. If you remove the score and just had it on its own 2 feet over here, it would also tell a story completely coherently. So how do we find that balance? And then of course, he loves synthetic and electronic and synthy stuff. And so we're trying to find the balance of electronic and orchestral. And it was awesome to work with him.
Yeah, and it was happening. This is unusual too, to my experience. He's writing the music the day we're shooting those scenes. It's happening at the same time because, of course, he's there in our COVID ranch. So how often does that happen, that the composer is looking at the day's footage and putting music on it then and there with the writer-director? So it's just such a bones part of the body of this film. There's
such a bones.
No separating them.
I had a little portable speaker, and I had shooting the neon box sequence was towards the end of the schedule, and he'd been kind of tinkering away for a few days and I hadn't really heard from him. And then he kind of comes into our little room. We were all living together like summer camp style. And so he comes in and he's like, I have an idea I want to play for you. And so he played me the piece of music that happens when her memories sort of like flooding her, and in the neon box when the little hand moves the hand from the razor, and then when the water explodes from the doors, he's like, I think this could be really good for the neon box sequence. And so he plays and I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. I just blasted it, in my little speaker, and literally on set in the neon box, literally setting the tone for the whole environment, the air that we were breathing. And that was so cool. And you don't, it's just unusual, that you get to have that on set with you.
To be able to hear it. And, and the music, as well as just the overall concept of any artist, the hardest part is I have to get what's in my head to be what the final vision is, whether it be music, whether it be film, whether it be whatever it is. And, you know, Dermot, I'm sure there's the same thing. You read a script and you have in your head, okay, this is how I'm going to be before you show up. But translating that is the hardest part, is what makes what both you do so special, is you're able to do that and communicate that, because it's always the biggest challenge, even for me with music, is like, okay, I hear this great song, let me record it. That's not the song I heard, you know?
Right.
So yeah, that the music absolutely plays a great part in it. And, you know, I know we don't have tons of time, and I appreciate it, you know, you guys spending the time with us to talk about the film, but I can't move on without at least touching on both the art direction and the cinematography in this, which is one of the things that, you know, it's not like there's a beautiful opening, or every shot is gorgeous. I mean, absolutely gorgeous.
The colors, everything.
Yeah, and that's where it comes from too, where it's like, what the art, you know, the art direction, and it's when I'm like, what was the budget on this? Because it's you know, from the opening shot on. So did you look at different cinematographers, or?
Yeah, so Shane Kelly, you know, obviously has a very impressive body of work, and he operates in this kind of naturalistic, like Linklater place, you know, and you know, we were shooting in Austin. We wanted to make this an Austin movie, really, and not because of the pandemic, but also because we're like, the level of talent in Austin is really sequestered into the few directors that live there. But like, maybe we could snag them for a second and take them on like a different wild ride. So Rodney Becker, our production designer, and Shane Kelly, our DP, both Austin based, and I mean, just extreme creativity and talent were pouring through them in ways that was so beautiful to witness. And for Shane and I, like, our language together was like, he immediately delivers you a beautiful shot. That's just what he does, you know? And for me, it was like, how can we tilt it a little bit to give it this other thing that I'm going for, whether it's in color or whether it's in distortion, or, you know, obviously the jump cuts are for me in the edit, but like, it was such a beautiful marriage of sorts, because he sees the world so clearly and so beautifully and naturally. So I was kind of like able to like sprinkle some stuff on there, you know? And I mean, Rudy, I mean, our lights, I mean, it was just such a feast. And the time that the world was in too, is everyone just had, you know, no one was going home to their families at night. This was a true collaboration of everybody just zeroing in, you know, which is very cool.
And the location manager deserves credit too for finding the most bizarre house in Texas.
Yeah, that's it's so weird that like you can
believe that is just outside of Austin. I mean, it's like it doesn't seem like it's in Austin at all. It's this, We looked at a lot of places, but we walked into this house, and I looked around, and I was like, I went and I meditated underneath that tree. And I got in the car, and Brenton, our producer, was like, all right, well, we're going to like 25 other places today. And I just looked at him and I was like, well, this is the house, but that's fine. We can go look at other things.
Yeah, because it's like when you look at it like as just a normal house, it's a beautiful house. But when you look at it with that music, that's
with
not
that
a house
pool and everything.
Yeah, I don't want to go in that house. You know what I mean? So especially with Dermot screaming. Yeah. Meanwhile, Dermot's in the house screaming while you're outside. You're like, what's going on in that house? Yeah. You know, but I can't thank you both enough for joining us. You know, Dermot, I've been a fan of yours for so very long, and Carlson, you have a fan in me going forward. And I guess that brings up the next question. What are you thinking of next? I'm sure you've had your next film in your head before you shot one frame of this one.
Yeah,
so what's next for you?
three things I'd like to well, so the first is called Feminine Knox. It's a coming of age psychological horror, but it's middle school.
Okay.
Middle school Y2K, 2001.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of like I am comparing it just for ease to Valerie and Her Week of Wonders meets Bo Burnham's 8th grade.
Okay.
And then the other one, actually, I don't know like what I can say. Anyway, it's a pregnancy horror.
Okay.
That is like proper horror. Really excited. And then the other one is like a sort of 90s noir, like thriller, kind of like the North Star is American Psycho. So.
Oh, awesome! You're going to
Yeah.
be very, very busy for a very, very long time, Carlson.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. That means a lot.
Dermot, your turn. What have you got coming up?
Well, there's a couple things out now. Hard
Okay.
Luck Love Song is in
Okay.
theaters, and you can find it around. It's a great sort of country song of a movie. I play a supporting role in. Also, everyone's going to watch Christmas is Canceled. That'll be in December
Yes.
on
All right.
Netflix. But a
Okay.
favorite of mine, is the Chickasaw Rancher I made a couple of years ago. It's a handmade movie about a true story. It's a Western set in Oklahoma. And
Cool.
because it's good timing because November's Native American Heritage Month, you'll find that on Netflix too. The thing about the streamers is they don't really advance advertise because they get too many people calling and say, when is it on? How can I see it? So they just drop it at the last second. But as soon as you hear about the Chickasaw Rancher, it's a great movie to support at this time, and it tells a great American story. Martin Sensmeyer has the lead and is a fantastic actor to watch and a dear friend.
Awesome. And you definitely have that Western look. I could absolutely see you in a Western.
I did pretty
Remember
good in this.
Young
I saw it the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a couple other things coming up. Bring them up next time we talk,
Okay.
for sure.
Sounds good. And I can't.
And three of those things are Carlson's next three movies.
Awesome. Well, and you know, will the curtain behind you be making an appearance anytime soon?
I meant to say, it's actually from the set of The Blazing World.
Okay, there it is.
Shipped over to London, so Carlson would feel at home. That it's a little over the top, a little
Thank you.
gothic garish.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. How did you manage to clean all the blood off of it in time?
Exactly.
And one last thing before we go, would you guys mind giving us a quick ID?
That was my best radio voice. Like,
Yeah,
hello,
radio voice and a
Carlson
really
Young.
an interesting inflection. I liked it. Where
Mhm.
you put the stress on
It's like when I
whole.
listen
Like
to the top
obviously it
10
only
hits
has an
already.
H.
Yeah.
And welcome, and thank you for being here.
From
Listen, your
here's a new one from Lady Gaga.
good stuff.
Going to some smooth jazz tonight.
Well, once again, congratulations, Carlson, and congratulations to both of you on with already great careers. And you guys are welcome back anytime. Anytime you need to promote anything, just say the word. Thank you again for
And the
watching.
movie is so great.
Yeah, actually,
you.
let's
Lord.
get back to. I'm gonna play the trailer now.
Cool.
But you know, check out the trailer. But you can get it pretty much anywhere at this point. It's on anywhere you can get a movie on demand. Go and grab it. It's absolutely stunning. And if you watch it on your phone or your iPad, we're all gonna come to your house and break it. So watch watch it on a nice big screen, big TV. Watch it
It's
the
a
way it's
good
supposed to.
Halloween movie.
Exactly. Yeah. So how about that, Carlson? You just go to everyone's house who's watching your film on a small device and kill them.
And like the Michael Myers mask, just like out their window. Like,
Right.
I see you on your iPad.
Perfect. And you know what? Wear a Dermot Mulroney mask. That's all.
Yeah.
That's terrifying right there.
Thank you again for listening to the whole. I
Thank
am
you so
Rob
much,
Spreads.
you guys.
And I'm Lori
Thanks,
Levine.
Carlson. Love you.
Bye-bye. We'll be right back, guys. Hold on. Dermot, also just an absolute honor and congratulations on a great career. I'm all in on anything you do.
He
so.
was quoting you from Arrested Development last night.
Yeah, Dusty.
All right. So
Yeah.
few people have talked to me about Arrested Development. I know there's a golden nugget.
You know
in that
what? If
show.
you got a few minutes, I'm still recording. It's up to you. Would you got a minute? Or no?
Nobody knows about that character.
All right. Well, you know what? You have a minute. I'll keep going.
I do for Arrested Development, of course. For Mitchell
I love
Hurwitz,
this so much.
anything.
So we stopped, and then Laurie brought up the fact that, I was quoting Dusty from Arrested Development, and Dermot plays Dusty, and he said he's got a great AD story. And as a rabid Arrested Development fan, I'd love to hear this one.
Oh, I don't know if it's so much a story, except that when that character dropped was at the end of the 5th season, but that was the 12th year, and they were cobbling together cast and having, social media issues and all sorts of stuff was going on. But during the heart of that whole dust up, Mitchell Hurwitz called me to come in to play the key character, Dusty. Darn it, his name was so important. And as much as I'm like the younger boyfriend to Lucille Bluth, I'm also hired on then to defend Buster in the murder trial of Lucille too. Yeah. So it's a central plot storyline that's been going on for several seasons, but even more so several years, because they took forever to shoot
to put it together. Yeah.
That out of the blue he calls me, and I find myself a central character in the courtroom with the following: Henry Winkler and Martin Mull off the top, and then the entire regular cast of Arrested Development, who are America's funniest people.
Agreed.
So it fell to me to try to walk Will Arnett through a brief interrogation on the stand. And it's certainly one of the funniest scenes I've ever been in, whether I'm funny or not, but just that scenario.
No, you are. You nailed that, like, hippie vibe so well.
Couldn't believe I got that call. Yeah. And Radler, Dusty Radler.
Dusty Radler, that's right. And the introduction to you was great. You look at Jessica Walter, you say, "Hi, I'm Dusty," and Lucille says, "Yes, you are."
That's what Mitchell does. He'll come up with like one pun. And he had another pun too, is I got to look after the boys and my boys. I got to look after my boys. And we learned that it's a bunch of other old, beachcombing surfers that are, timed out of their Malibu life. Also, he means his friends. Yeah. But Mitch always had it where he was setting up that Lucille might think that I was a doting father to my boys. That was it. And that I was confused for my famous father, the lawyer.
Right. It's there's so many things woven. We had Tony Hale on the show.
Oh my God.
So when Buster. I was talking to Tony Hale about Buster, I started watching the show when it was coming out. Like every week I would watch, and then when it was canceled, I was devastated. So watching Tony Hale when he's talking about Buster, even in this case, started doing the like Buster lean back, and I'm like, it's Buster. Like I couldn't help myself. I got like all excited,
Well, by the time Dusty encounters Buster, he is completely over the deep end. He's got a hook. And he's basically slavering out of one side of his mouth. Right. And I'm supposed to defend him for some, I don't know. It was such an honor. It was such an incredible call. I even asked, so I should try and do a good job today, come to think of it. Because I even asked Mitch, how come you thought of me? Because it's so like overtly comedic and I'm not always used that way. And he said that he looked me up and saw me on a couple of interview shows and could tell that I was quick-witted.
See that? Which you are.
So that got me into Arrested Development. So all you quick-witted people out there, hang on. They might eventually find it on YouTube.
But you started with improv, didn't you?
I did. I did. Well, that was one of my roles when I was in college. But it was a very fertile time for that. Improv comedy was really sort of coming to the fore out of Second City and SNL and all that Chicago comedy bloom. So I was on the side of that at Northwestern University in a show, the Meow Show, that other notable comedians have come out of. So that was part of my early acting training. And then I kind of was used more dramatic kid, get her pregnant and other young inconveniences.
After school special. I saw that one. I think Stephen Colbert played it with you. Were in like a daytime show with Bill Bixby and.
That was really my very first one. So I have a lot of pride in that moment that they picked me out of utter obscurity and put me in a lead role in a TV movie of the week. Of course, they were looking for young white actors to fill those roles. So I was really brought into Hollywood kind of as like the next Judd Nelson wave, the second wave.
The second wave.
But it is true that was right then in 85 and 86, the first time Hollywood made so many movies with teenagers in it. So that was the new product. And that's why that's kind of how I found my way in. Long Gone was an early movie. I also had an unexpected pregnancy there. That's a baseball movie for HBO. And Daddy.
You need to use protection, Dermot.
I know there were a couple of them. Daddy is a movie that I think was on ABC. Also, it's like a Sunday night movie, and did tons for my career there in the lead role of a promising young man who messes up. And I've never even said this publicly. I'm very proud that I was the very first actor on network television to hold a condom.
There you go.
On camera. They had to pass it by all of the, all the committees in TV land. So that was a big moment, maybe 1986, 87.
Standards and practices was all looking at a photo of you with a condom on.
And they're like, he seems like he should have, he shouldn't breed. Let's have him hold a rubber.
and then the
face of birth control right here.
He'll trick you.
You're practicing in the mirror with it all day. How about that?
No, but it was an insert close-up of my hand holding a wrapped up
condom. Oh, see, I'm glad you said wrapped up. For some reason, I just thought it was loose.
Oh, yeah. No, they weren't that liberalized. Somebody else probably holds that distinction on network television. Probably happened somewhere in like 97.
You know what? I'm going to do research for next time you come on, Dermot. But once again, please check out all the new projects that Dermot's in. And again, check out The Blazing World. I'm sorry we lost Carlson at this point, but you really need to check it out. It's a beautiful film, and you can tell how much respect that you have for Carlson and her vision and her potential and what she's going to be. She's going to be around for a long time. And
absolutely cool to work with her, as you could see today. And thanks a million, especially for supporting films like this, because they're back and they need as much help and as much cinema lovers as we can get.
We still will. Thank you again, Dermot. Take care. I really
you bet.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dermot.
You bet. Bye.
This reality is just one gradation of a whole series of planes' existence.
Hello? Mom?
Hey!
Honey!
Oh, my little girl.
Is it possible for someone to be trapped in another dimension?
The physical or the metaphysical realm?
Can someone be taken against their will?
By what?
Can they be brought back if they're trapped?
Don't be afraid. We met before. Don't you remember?
What are you?
She is imprisoned between life and death.
Let me bring her back.
She is held by 3 demons. To open the door, find the 3 and take their keys. And I warn you, they're not going to be as nice to you as I am.
Name your price for the key.
Darkness eats, darkness keeps. He knows she is behind the door. There's something inside him. It burns.
The key, please!
Open the door. Take us back! Open it!